It's time. Time to do space weather and meteorology and chew bubblegum. And here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, we're all out of bubblegum. Sunspot activity is dropping off a cliff. Oh my god. The X-ray profile has dropped. We've seen less flaring in the past 24 hours. Some minor CME strikes, some more on the way. And lower solar activity, of course, means that we're all going to die. We'll talk about cults and more. That's some SDO imagery. Here's some more. Again, sunspot number dropping here. We're seeing sunspots just degrade and evaporate. I still say the likelihood of an NX-class solar flare is kind of high, especially as sunspot 3078 approaches the southwestern limb. Here's a colorized magnetogram. And yes, sunspot number dropping, radio flux dropping. Let's take a brief look at volcanoes. Here's your rundown. Mount Ibu is erupting in an explosive fashion. That's located in Indonesia. It's producing a flight level 070, which is a 7,000-foot volcanic ash plume. Dakono, 7,000-foot ash plume from Dakono as well as it explodes. 15,000-foot ash plume over Guatemala from Fuego as it explodes. It's a flight level 150. Headed farther south to Colombia. Nevado del Ruiz exploding. Flight level 210. It's a 21,000-foot ash plume. Revenador's got two exploding volcanoes, Sangay and Revenador. 20,000-foot ash plume over Sangay. 16,000-foot ash plume over Revenador and Sabancaya. Exploding. A 24,000-foot ash plume is moving at 20 knots in a northeasterly direction. Please don't pole vault the caldera. It's a flight level 240. Let's check earthquakes. There's the past 90 days. And only 2 7-magnitude quakes over the past 90 days, which kind of equates to an earthquake drought. I mean, there's 2010. You can see how many red bars are there. Those are 7+ magnitude quakes. You can see how often they happen. There's 2013, 2014, 2015, and so on. There was a really long earthquake drought in 2018. No 7 magnitudes between March and August. So anyway, a slight earthquake drought going on. The largest quakes of the past 24 were only 5.2 magnitudes, so pretty calm as far as seismic activity goes. One of those 5.2s was in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Another one was in the South Sandwich Islands region. And we won't spend too much time on this as there's plenty of stuff going on in space. Yes. And if you think space is fake, please leave us a comment. Please leave us a comment if you think space is fake. We love comments like that. And here's some 304 angstrom imagery. That's the last 24 hours from SDO. So we've got some spectacular imagery here of some CMEs, some blob-like coronal mass ejections, leaving the solar corona in a structured fashion. We'll even show a close-up of that activity. That's 30 frames per second. Here's 10 frames per second. And that is the last 24 hours coronagraph imagery and SDO imagery composite. No, they're not alien spacecraft. They are giant pieces of solar plasma, much larger than the entire planet. And of course, if a chunk of plasma like that was headed directly toward Earth, it would cause a significant geomagnetic storm. You may see the aurora in Cuba or something like that if one of those directly struck Earth. We'll let you know later in the video where those are headed. Radio flux now at 105 solar flux units. There's the 1-year chart of the radio flux. It's this black line, the most proportional data to sunspot number. In fact, on the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, you can look at the solar cycles. There's solar cycle 25 progressing way ahead of schedule, and there's lots more to the solar cycle to come. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video as well. Solar wind remains elevated here, and the forecast for geomagnetic storms continues through tomorrow and into Monday. So I would tend to agree here, as we are expecting 2 additional coronal mass ejection strikes one early in the day tomorrow, and indeed one early in the day on Monday. So NOAA and I agree for once. Next, looking at Earth's geomagnetic moment, Earth's magnetic moment from space. This scale is magnetohydrodynamic pressure, or nanopascals. And things are actually somewhat geomagnetically calm here at the moment. Although we do have a high-speed coronal hole wind stream, coronal mass ejection strikes are taking a little break here. We've seen repeated moments of geomagnetic storm conditions over the past few days, and more to come, and lots more to come to the solar cycle, as well as in this video. That's the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground over the same period, the last 4 hours. Check the time and date stamps above the imagery if you like. Again, things pretty geomagnetically calm here at the moment. Since we did have repeated geomagnetic storms, we're of course sharing some auroral imagery on Twitter. So here is some of it. For those of you who refuse to set up an account over on Twitter, I don't know why. Set up an account on Twitter, you'll see things you can only see on Twitter. We have to have exclusive content everywhere, of course. And there are some aurorae, multicolored aurorae, from Manitoba, Canada. And there are some more from the same user. Twitter.com/smashamash if you want to share those with your friends and foes. Again, geomagnetic calm conditions at the moment. We are back down to a KP3. So another brief period of geomagnetic storm was generated by a magnetic field flip and some coronal mass ejection strike type situations. And right here is where that magnetic field increased and shifted to a negative BZ. So that's what triggered some geomagnetic unrest and geomagnetic storm conditions yesterday late in the day. Current conditions are about 7.8 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Solar wind speed here declining to 507 kilometers per second. I think that's the coronal hole high-speed stream subsiding. You can also see the plasma temperature dipping. Also, another minor coronal mass ejection strike looks like it occurred right in here. You can see those fluctuations in the plasma temperature measured by the Discover, which is this blue bar down at the bottom pane. Here are the GOES magnetometers for the past 3 days. We're seeing pretty weak fields at the geosynchronous orbit. Those are about 10.5 thousand miles of altitude, the GOES 16 and GOES 17, and they're geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. And we talked a little earlier about how solar cycle 25's got a long way to go, and why? It's because of this right here. That is the north solar polar field, which you can see is still somewhat oriented at the north polar region. So that means that I would say we're not even halfway to solar max. And then the migration of the north solar polar field well behind the migration of the south solar polar field, which is largely facing the Earth at the moment. Here's a line of sight field plot, and you can see there is no significant polar field down here at the South Pole. And the line of sight coronal hole plot will show that even better. You can see the North Pole solar polar field here is still somewhat fixated at the North Pole, although part of it has migrated. Most of the South solar polar field has left the South solar polar region. So the South polar migration is ahead of the North one. We're going to show you some imagery from SDO on that. By the way, if you don't follow us on smashamash.com/smashteam, you're not going to see alerts. So there are email alerts that get sent out to those who are signed up for email alerts, such as yesterday when we alerted people to the KP6 expected, and when we also alerted people to the return of the geomagnetic storm conditions. It'll help all of you aurora watchers out there. Smashomash.com/SmashTeam. If you want to support the channel, do it at the gold or silver level. Send us a few bucks per month to increase the probability these videos will continue to exist and remain publicly visible and free for all to view. We're also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Smashomash. Install the mobile app to actually see when we go live. And support the channel with a like, a subscribe. Press the share button. If you're an influencer, drop us a line. We'll appear on your channel. We'll bring you on our channel. We also have videos that aren't about space weather. Click playlists for that on the YouTube channel, and most of our video content is indeed on the YouTube channel. Thanks to all you new viewers out there who've found us. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. As we attempt to help people understand things like meteorology, physics, etc. Help yourself by becoming a member of SureMed, the American Better Health Organization. Allow yourself the convenience of doctors by phone, counselors by phone, virtual veterinarians. Dental discounts of 15 to 50% at hundreds of thousands of locations nationwide. With your SureMed membership, use the link below the video and on our homepage to access that. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. There is the homepage, smashomash.com. In 2019, a crack YouTube unit was sent to social media prison for a crime we didn't commit. We promptly escaped the maximum security social media stockade to the internet underground, where we survive as producers a fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, if you're sick of nonsense on YouTube, and if you can find the content, maybe you can hire the Smash Team. Again, links on the homepage as well as below the video to all kinds of additional things. Today's featured product is linkable on the homepage as well. You'll find a link to our Redbubble shop where it'll show products in order of best selling. No surprises as to what's the best selling product. The second is do not pole vault the caldera. Today's featured product is associated with a cult. Have you noticed that there are currently more cults than in the history of mankind? I mean, why is it that more people believe nonsense nowadays than believed nonsense 50 years ago? It's pretty crazy. It probably has to do with propaganda. Propaganda and disinformation. I mean, hey, who cares about misinformation, right? People being wrong about stuff when people put out wrong information on purpose to support some kind of ridiculous narrative. What's the common feature of all cults? Well, belief in nonsense. And there's a lot of belief in nonsense. All sorts of destructive cults. You can find some on YouTube. Some of them even believe that they're covering space weather, like, oh, I don't know, some doomsday cults out there. What about political cults? The Nazis believed nonsense. And Wikipedia suggesting that the Ayn Rand Institute is a cult. I'm not so sure they believe nonsense. But in any case, that is the common thread to all cults. You're required to believe nonsense if you're expected to do whatever other crazy stuff the cult has you doing. So don't drink the Kool-Aid. And definitely don't join the cult of Covidiocy. Today's featured product is Fauci Face of Evil. Yes. Fauci Face of Evil. Why is there no accountability? Why are you living in a banana republic with two justice systems? Rampant fraud, rampant waste, misuse, disuse, disinformation, propaganda, corporatism, a complete lack of accountability. How are certain people not in prison? Don't you ask yourself this? The featured product is the Fauci Face of Evil bath mat. Yes, the bath mat. Put your feet on the face of evil daily with the Fauci Face of Evil Tony Fauci Fraudster bath mat. He's been committing fraud since December of 2020 and lying to Congress. How he's not in prison, I'm not sure. And let's get back to the realm of space. Are you spaced out by fraud and nonsense? Well, there's so much of it on YouTube. There is certainly plenty. And, let us know. Send us a message on Discord or something like that. And thanks for leaving comments, Smasho staff. Tin Man 1057, good morning to you as well. And General Disturbance. Yes. Dogma. Dogma, not facts. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, here's imagery of coronal holes in 211 angstroms. And those are all, by the way, South Pole-oriented coronal holes. That is the South Solar Polar Field, basically. Most of it is kind of pointed at the Earth at the moment. And let's move to the realm of sunspots. So likelihood of an X-class flare, I say, is still very high. For some reason, this is saying 99% chance. Maybe this Integrated Space Weather Analysis Center magnetic connectivity solarscape viewer agrees with us that sunspot 3078 is highly likely to produce an X-class flare. We have seen a general decline of sunspot activity, though. And if you're wondering what this is, it's just awesome. We haven't shown it for a while. It's the coronal magnetic field plot. Some chaotic processes going on in the solar corona. Let's take a look at sunspots. Here's your SDO magnetogram. Again, sunspots degrading over the past 24. Here's your SDO continuum imagery. And there still are quite a few groups here. And I still say 3078 is going to produce an X-class flare. Remember, folks, large flares are more likely on the limb than in the center of the solar disk. And that's the area where I'm expecting this to emanate from. And remember, folks, don't get solar flares and coronal mass ejections confused. They are completely different phenomenon. Solar flares are photons of the X-ray variety. Coronal mass ejections are protons, diffuse gas, blasting out of the solar corona. Here's your continuum imagery of sunspot 3078. And you can see the X-ray profile really dropping off a cliff here. So we had quite a exciting few days there, and the last 3 days had 3 M-class solar flares. Now dropping down to a mid-level B-class X-ray output. Here's imagery of the past 24 from SDO. Could be some new active regions rising there in the east. But at the moment, solar activity declining. The hot spot is rotating away from Earth for now. No spikes in the proton flux, no relativistic particles of any note. And here's your star chart for all of you stargazers. If you're wondering what constellations are overhead, we like to use in-the-sky.org and face our star chart to the south. That's where the ecliptic is located from our spot here in Lehigh Valley, and everybody in the northern hemisphere. If you're up before dawn, you might see Venus, Mars, the Moon, and Jupiter, all up there near the ecliptic. Here's your solar system forecast. This is where things are now as we approach a new moon. There's where things will be in a week. We've got a crescent waning at the moment, and we're 1 week from a new moon. My favorite phase. Shout out to all of you reverse werewolves out there. Here's some coronagraph imagery. This is yesterday's coronagraph imagery. And are those CMEs headed toward Earth? Well, there are 2 headed toward Earth. One expected to arrive tomorrow on the 21st, Sunday, and one expected to arrive on the 22nd, Monday. Are these headed toward Earth? We'll have to keep you in suspense. Here's today's coronagraph imagery so far. And let's take a look at the view from stereo A as well here at Lagrange 5 and the Soho-Lascaux C3. So we've paused this when the first of these 2 blob-like CMEs occurred. And let me pause for station identification. Once again, thanks for leaving comments, those of you who did during the live stream. So here are these blob-like CMEs coming out. And I don't see any indication that that's earthly directed. That ejecta is all south of the Earth line, and for you new viewers, Earth would be off in this orientation. From stereo A's perspective, it would be behind you from the perspective of the Soho-Lascaux C3. The second blob-like CME, also not earthly directed, well off to the south. So we'll just let those play through here. Stereo A will bring it back to the 18th. So there's your additional coronagraph analysis. And here's some better imagery. That's the last 24 hours of CMEs and 304 angstroms. Next, looking at filaments, and there are a ton of filaments in the northern hemisphere now. A lot of filaments up there. Geez, look at that. Some of them are quite huge. Northern hemisphere coated with filaments at the moment. So likelihood for CMEs remains very high, folks. Very high. We'll be keeping an eye on it. And when I say ion, well, you get the idea. Here are some ions. These are helium ions. 304 angstroms is the ultraviolet wavelength that they emit at those temperatures. And that's the last about 3 hours from the GOES 16 SUVI. Here's the last 24 hours from SDO and 171 angstroms, the house favorite wavelength. Remember, folks, give SMASH staff a raise by becoming a member of the SMASH team. Thanks to whoever picked up the Universum Liberate shirt, by the way. You will not be disappointed by the print quality. Again, links below the video and on the homepage at smashomash.com. And let's do bonus features. Satellite's community dashboard indicating some surface charging hazards. That's low energy electrons building up on the outside of satellites around the Central Pacific and Mexico. Electron flux has risen quite a bit here as we watch the coronal hole high-speed stream slowly subsiding. Looks like we're just about to go back into warning territory here for the GOES 16 and GOES 17's radiographic measurements at the F-layer. So they're not located at the F-layer, but they measure at the F-layer using radiography from their geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. There's the NOAA forecast, and no arguments there. Green boxes are the forecast. Yellow diamonds are not lucky charms. Those are the observation. Here's the one-year chart to put it in context, and let's take a look at the F-ionosphere layer in vibrational frequency. So here it is in megahertz. And here it is in anomalygram, anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. We've got some north polar low-frequency anomalies happening, as well as some over the mid-latitudes here in the northern hemisphere, also some around the mid-southern hemisphere latitudes. And we'll pause it on the latest image as we do. There's 1045 universal time ionogram, and there's 1045 universal time anomalygram. Here's a total electron content forecast. Now we're looking at free electrons. Free electrons all the way up to the outer Van Allen belt, through two plasmaspheres, the inner Van Allen belt and the ionosphere, the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. Those are the most likely places to see GPS errors. And here's a diagram to show you what we're talking about. Your GPS satellite, it's located at about 12.5 thousand miles of altitude. How about the latest intensity gram? As sunspots degrade, oh my God, we're going to die because low solar activity is going to kill you, high solar activity is going to kill you. Everything's going to kill you, folks. Don't join a doomsday cult, because the oldest grift in the world is, the end is near. The end is near, therefore do things that I tell you to do and send me cash. It's ridiculous. We cite facts on the channel. And how about some more imagery here? Let's bring up 335 angstroms for once. We haven't shown it on the channel for quite a while. The soothing blue tones of 335 angstroms, one of the many species of ionized iron. And it's time to move to the realm of meteorology. And we're starting things out in the meteorology segment looking at the UV index on nullschool.net. And you may notice that the UV count, the UV index is low on the dark side of the planet, and it's high just north of the equator around noon local time. Isn't that just fascinating? That's the mysteries of the universe revealed here on the channel during our meteorology segments. Anyway, let's switch to wind. Hey now. What? Well, there's temperature. There we go. There are the surface winds. There are the surface winds of the dark side. You'll never understand the power of the dark side. No, seriously, that's the dark side. You get the idea. What the heck? Why? Why do you refuse? Nullschool.net. It's not. You are not pleasing me today. What is up with that? There we are. There are the jet streams of the east. We've got some backward jet streams over the West Pacific and the northern Indian Ocean. Here are the jet streams of the west, the Americas. Surface winds. Surface winds of the central world. And your jet streams. Next, your weather.gov map. We've got some coastal warnings here, some tropical storm warnings and flash flood warnings, as well as some flood watches for large portions of New Mexico and Arizona, some gale watches around Alaska and Hawaii. And here come some forecasts. It's the total accumulated precipitation forecast. And check it out, there are some forecasts there for like 6 inches of rain in portions of central Texas. Eeks. As the flood watches continue over most of New Mexico and Arizona. If your county's lit on the weather.gov map, head to weather.gov and click your county to get your alerts. Once again, there's your total accumulated precipitation forecast based on the GFS model for the next 72 hours. Rain totals listed here in inches. Next, your temperature anomaly forecast based on the same GFS model. It's the same period of time, the next 72 hours. Temperatures listed here in degrees Celsius. Next, your pressure maps. Windy.com. They got a great mobile app as well. Check it out if you like. Windy.com. And here's your NASA GOES lightning mapper for the last about 10 hours. And how about a real-time lightning map from lightningmaps.org, powered by blitzaltung.org. And we've got some live strikes in Alabama. Hey, Tuscaloosa. There's an active cell to your northeast. Could be some thunder rolling in. Also some lightning in Illinois. And some in Eastern Europe. Here's your radar.weather.gov map. We've got some rain moving across Chicago, headed toward Detroit and Cleveland. I don't know why it unanimated. It was animated, and then it just stopped animating. Because reasons. Here's your clouds and fog shortwave radiation map. And here's water vapor, I think. Maybe not. There's water vapor. From the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite, we've got an area of massive pressure gradients happening right here. Check out that pressure gradient. Cold, dry, massive air colliding with warmer, moister air equals an atmospheric waterfall. Not surprisingly, it's causing some precipitation. Here's your recap, starting with the U.S. Doppler radar. .9 nanometer infrared radiation satellite showing clouds and fog. And last but not least, water vapor. Rapid cloud nucleation happening there in the Gulf as a strong low has formed. It is being a little bit constrained by some dry massive air. And let's just take one more look here at nullschool.net, and we'll take a look and see what the temperatures are like. How hot is the water? That's the question. So we'll click on ocean, we'll check sea surface temperature. And indeed, temperatures are kind of hot there in the Gulf, so not so surprising. That water there, 86 plus degrees. Yowzers. So that's definitely a zone of massive convection. Anyway, that's your sea surface temperatures map. A lot of hot water to go with a lot of hot air on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. And may that solar wind be at your back. Opinions expressed in this video, not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network, least busted name in news.